What's up guys, Baer here, and in today's video I want to share some tips and techniques I have for turning an ordinary store-bought tombstone for Halloween into something extraordinary. So with that being said, let's roll that intro. So, let's start off with the backstory. I've been what you could call a home haunter for about 5 years now. So a home haunter is basically anybody who goes a little above and beyond normal people. Like if you have a jack-o'-lantern on your porch, it probably doesn't count. But if you have like a bunch of blow-ups, a yard haunt with a bunch of gravestones, static figures, something a little more than ordinary, you'd be called a home haunter. So I've made a lot of DIY props and I bought a lot of tombstones from the store. So in this video I want to show you how I turn this average tombstone I got behind me, which I bought from Target for 15 bucks, into a Hollywood grade prop that anybody can be proud to show in their yard. So let's get started. As you can tell by the title of the video, this is only part 1 of part 3. This is my first time actually doing a video like this, so I'm very excited. And let's go over the parts. So part 1, we're going to take this flat, boring tombstone. If you notice, it just looks like a store-bought tombstone. We're going to take this and spray the entire thing down with a flat black spray paint. Make sure to fill in all these crevices. Let that dry. Then part 2 will be dry brushing everything besides the snake and possibly the skull and all the mossy parts to give it a super good depth, because once you fill in everything in black and the dimples and then dry brush it over, it'll give a nice pop to it, so it just doesn't look like a flat ordinary tombstone. And that'll be pretty much it for part 1. That should take about 10 minutes worth of video. And part 2, we're going to paint this snake. Obviously it's an anaconda, so we'll probably try to paint it to look like an anaconda. So we're going to need lots of colors like yellow, green, brown, gray. I'll probably end up painting the little eyes here a nice ugly neon red color to make it look evil. And then we're going to go ahead and tea stain. Anybody who doesn't know the process of tea staining, it's actually aging something without it being old, you could say. Like if you want to make an old piece of paper look old, you could actually take tea and rub it on it and it'll give it a nice brown aged patina. But in this case, we're going to actually take watered down black, green, and a few other colors and let it drip down here to give it the look of like a marble or a granite that's aged a lot and has a lot of calcium buildup. So, and that'll be most of the part 2's video. And then part 3 will be, we're going to actually paint this moss so it doesn't just look like plastic moss here. And we're going to probably add some real moss if I can go find some in my backyard. And I've got a bunch of dead pumpkin vines and other dead foliage out in my yard I'm going to hot glue on here. And the last step, of course, is I'm going to stage this in my yard with some nice lighting and show you guys how it can look in a professional environment. And that'll be part 3 of this 3-part series. So with that being said, let's get this thing spray painted. Alright, tombstone is all flat blacked front and back, and it's dry. Little tip, if you really want to, just do it in a ventilated area. You can use a heat gun and actually speed up the process of drying the spray paint. But just be careful, you can actually burn the surface and ruin what you're already trying to do. So just a little tip, I've used it before, it works pretty good. Especially when it's cold like it is today. So, we're going to need a little bit of gray to replicate what a tombstone looks like. So I chose pewter gray. This is the cheap apple barrel acrylic paint you get from Walmart. It's, I think, 2 for $1. This will go a long way. You can get probably like 10 tombstones out of one of these, so it's pretty affordable. So just throw a little on here. Now this is called dry brushing, so it really has to be dry. Otherwise you get a lot of blobs and you'll actually fill in all the black on the dimples that you were actually trying to create for the shadows and the depth. So definitely take your time, get a nice piece of cardboard, get nice and dry like that. So it barely paints, and you just want to basically brush the surface very, very lightly. So let's get started. This part is always my favorite too, because it really takes something from a flat, black, boring tombstone to like something that really, really looks amazing and has a lot of depth and actually looks like a professional did it. So here we go. And around the lettering here, I'm definitely trying not to get in the divots as much as possible. Like I said, just lightly brush it on. Takes a little while to get the experience for this. And at the same time, you're actually sort of creating a tea staining effect if you do it right and brush down. It kind of looks like things have washed down this for years and years. Like this right here would even possibly be too thick, so you take your finger and a little water and get it before it dries out. Yeah, it's okay, I guess. And of course you want to paint this to your theme. Like my theme was always like a rotten, disgusting graveyard. Like all my tombstones are a little darker than a normal tombstone would be, which would be like a really light granite. Mine are very dark like this. So if yours aren't like this, you just have to figure out what works for you pretty much. And that's really all there is to it. This is going to take some detail in here. It's okay if you get it on the moss or whatever case you have here, because you're just going to paint over that too anyways. This is going to be like probably 3 or 4 different shades of green and dark yellow and brown. Make it look really disgusting. Alright, so the first layer of gray dry brushing is done and it already looks awesome. Obviously the snake is just popping out now because it's not just one color like the rest of the tombstone. And the moss is definitely going to pop once I actually paint it the right color, but as you can see it already looks 10 times better than it did when I first bought it. So next step, I am going to actually use the same gray I already had, what's left of it, and add a little bit of white in. This way we can create some secondary, a little lighter gray color to dry brush over it now and create even more depth and even more janky little aging effects on it. So get this mixed up and dry brush some more. I'd say dry brushing is probably 90% of the work you have to do on a tombstone, and the other 10% is the little detailing jobs like the foliage and just touching things up here and there. When you have an edge like this, which would naturally be exposed to more weathering and more effects, so it breaks down and becomes less sharp, if you just take your brush and do what it does naturally and just run it over, and it'll actually paint the edge a lighter color, and that'll just aid in your effect of creating more depth on your tombstone. You can do it up here too. Just a little bit on these parts will go a long way. Just like that. So now I'm going to switch over to this fan brush because I don't want to completely dry brush with the white. I'm just creating more highlight on here. So I want to be very careful, make sure it's super dry before I put it on. And go down, downward strokes, like so. As I pull, it creates nice effects like the water was dripping down here. And that's all there is to it. And this works really well. If you do it right on the edges of the writing, it really highlights everything so the writing actually pops more without you having to fill this in and create artificial shadowing. And there it is. Got the second layer of dry brushing on. We're pretty much done with part 1 now. Let's do a before and after here. Let me get further back. So, here's the after, and here is the before. And wow, what a difference it makes. And we're only on part 1. So, we're going to be on to part 2 next, of course. If you missed the first part of the video, part 2 is going to be painting the snake and tea staining. So, stay tuned for the next video. And of course, if you like this video, give it a like. If you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the know for all my future uploads, make sure to hit that notification bell and make sure it's set to notifications on always. And I'll see you on the next part of this video. Greg Baer out.